Welcome to another episode of Corner, Memoirs of the Service Industry. On today's episode, I have a fantastic guest. I invited a really dear friend of mine, Coleen Morton, on. She is the brand director of Mulholland Distilling here in Los Angeles. They are the makers of, hands down, my favorite gin of all time. And they make a pretty damn good vodka and whiskey as well. The reason I wanted to bring her on is, like many of you, I'm out of work right now. And I have watched Coleen go from a bartender to a bar director to a GM and now a brand director of a liquor company. And I wanted to get her perspective on transitioning out of bartending, to give hope that there is life outside of this industry, that we can take the skills that we've learned in the industry and apply them in another skill set. And, you know, we go over that and a bunch of other stuff. And I think it's important to know that, you know, some of you might have been working in this industry for only a year or two, and some of you might have been working in it for, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. I don't know what the future holds for our industry. I don't know if it's going to come back in strength. I don't know if the pay is going to be the same and if we're going to be able to survive with just this as a job. And I wanted to get the perspective of somebody who's come out on the other side and has been really successful. And I think it could be very helpful to a lot of people out there. So sit back and enjoy, and let's start service. Yeah. You're listening to Corner, Memoirs of the Service Industry, a podcast set out to document the lives of those who work in service and hospitality. I'm Eric Chopo, and I'll be running the front of the house tonight. I'm a 22-year vet in the bar and restaurant scene and have worked and managed everything from Michelin star restaurants to dive bars and everything in between. I'm sitting down with members of our industry to talk about why they love doing what they do and share some stories along the way. Around every corner is a new story, a new hire, and a new experience. Coleen, how are you? Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. That's what everybody says.
Coleen is the brand director of Mulholland Distilling here in Los Angeles, California. But before that, Coleen has been a bartender, a bar director, a bar manager, a general manager. She's pretty much done it all in the business. And I'm welcoming you to the show to kind of talk about life outside of bartending and how you got there. So welcome. How are you doing?
Thanks. It's good. Hot hour, all alone in our apartment. So pretty good.
Yeah.
Considering. Yeah, not bad.
Awesome. I'm dying of heat. Like, this room is a box, just a heat box of a room. Sunsets here and it just kills me every day. So, all right, walk us through. How long have you been in the service industry? Primarily bartending, or did you get started somewhere else in the field? Walk us through.
I've been in service since I was senior year of high school. I started working at a Chinese food restaurant, the scoop and go kind of thing. And then started working at a cafe where we served beer and wine. So I was able to do that before 21. Ran a coffee shop for a little while when I was 19. So that was my first time actually serving people at a bar sort of setup, because we had a coffee bar. And that's where the idea of working with people and the hospitality really started to click for me.
Right.
But my whole life was kind of based around becoming a professional hairdresser. Okay. And that's really where my love for people began. Making people feel good and feel good about themselves is kind of all I ever really wanted in life. Right. So when hairdressing didn't really work out for me, bad joints, shoulders suck, I had to figure out something to do with myself that still kind of filled that part of me that needed to, I guess, please others, make people feel good. And I couldn't lift my arms much higher than that. And so we all know how to pour that. And I just jumped into the booze world. I started cocktailing at a place in downtown LA called the Redwood Bar and Grill. It's still there.
Yep.
It's been there forever. And a couple bartenders ended up leaving around the same time. They gave me a call and asked if I could bartend. And like we all know in this industry, you fake it till you make it. So I said, absolutely, I'll be there in the morning. Walked in there and was like, where do I begin? Like your first shift, and you realize people are coming in and you forgot that you need ice and you're panicking.
So your first experience was everybody's nightmare that they continue to have.
Oh yeah.
Not being prepared, not knowing where anything is. Like that was legit your first job.
That was legit my first time behind a bar ever. And I had, when I was a little bit younger and not even old enough to drink, I had bartended for people's little holiday parties where, they gave me a little book and they said, here's some roses, lime juice, and some other random stuff. Just make us cocktails. But that was my first time behind an actual bar. Luckily, I'd worked there long enough that I knew the food, and it was a lunch shift, so it was manageable. Right. But then it quickly turned into I was the only female bartender working Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, no bar back, and so you kind of like sink or swim, and that's when you realize like there's no half-assing it in the service industry. You just have to put all of your effort into everything, and that includes bussing tables and cleaning up puke and doing all the dirty work when you don't have a busser and you don't have a bar back. And I feel like I never really had to be a bar back, which I think is a good start off point for every bartender to learn what that's like. But I had to bar back myself. So
it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah. You got to do the dirty work. It's
the bartenders who've never had to do that as well as bar back that I always take some like, you never actually paid your dues, kid. They never actually did what you needed to do.
Yeah, when you're like in the weeds, but the weeds are so high above your head, and you're just like, don't cry. You're not allowed to cry. There's no crying in bartending.
Right.
Yeah.
It's.
But after that gig, we moved on to just little bar gigs. I worked with the Houston Brothers in Hollywood just intermittently while they were building all their bars around here, while they were building their empire, so to say, and learned a few tricks along the way. Learned that I was making everything from a Bloody Mary to a margarita to an old fashioned to a martini all wrong. Like the worst ways, ice chips and shaking martinis and rolling old fashions and doing the maraschino chair. Everything I was taught at a dive bar was, as you would assume, was so incorrect. So I had a lot of people helping me along the way, teaching me the ropes. I don't feel like there was as many at the time, those Instagrammable pictures or all the videos and the tutorials to help teach you techniques or anything like that. You had to learn from the people that you met along the way. Yeah. So that was an interesting road.
But you find yourself, all right, so now let's flash forward a little bit. Like now, I think I met you at Spring Street when you were there. And then was Spring Street a place that you went in as a bartender and then eventually took over the bar program there? Was that the first time that you worked your way up through there?
It was the second time, but the first time was at an Italian restaurant that was basically I was the only bartender. So eventually I was just the bar manager doing the orders and the scheduling for myself and one other person. But at Spring Street, I ended up getting the job because I had somehow got a job at the King Eddie. I go deep into the dive bar scene. That's my favorite thing in the world, dive bars, because you really have to love people to love those jobs. So I'd worked at King Eddie for a little while, and then they were owned by the same company at the time, and they started bringing me over to Spring Street. And then I think I had 4 or 5 different managers before I finally got forced into management. It was not my intention, but the whole staff took a vote as if there was some sort of bar democracy. and they basically put me in a position where if we get a new manager, it could be an awful experience, but if I just stepped up and do it, we could definitely have a better time.
I mean, it happens a lot like that. It's better to promote from within than bring somebody from the outside who doesn't know the culture, doesn't know the interdynamic relationships between all the staff, and 100%
exactly.
With that. Yeah.
Or just the neighborhood and how people are around there. You can't really change too much about a bar without people that are regulars freaking out. I know that at the time I started at Spring Street, I had never experienced that amount of regulars. And I doubt I ever will, because almost every single person that went into the bar on a daily basis, there could be 30 people, all went in almost every single day. And you had to remember all of their names. So training new staff was really just roll call, going over every regular's names, because every regular needed to feel special. And I think that's a big deal with hospitality. Is Spring Street really taught me just how deep the levels of hospitality can go for people, for the staff, and for your regulars that come in every day, and for the stranger that might come in once.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of segues into the question I ask all my guests is, what does hospitality mean to you? And I mean, that kind of sums it up right there, is that, that extra level of attention to detail that,
Yeah. I think it's the ability to make people feel like they're experiencing something, that they're special, that they aren't just another ticket. I used to tell my bar staff that you have to treat everybody like you might be the only person who ever says hi to them during the week or during the day.
That's great.
Downtown LA is a very transient sort of area. So most of those people, I think, live alone and they don't have a lot of friends. And a lot of the guys that sat at the bar were lonely guys who just wanted someone to talk to them.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a great way to look at it, that you might be the only friendly face that they've seen all day or all week.
Yeah.
And taking that approach really just kind of puts it all into perspective for you, exactly what that extra level of care, the hospitality, brings. That's great. I actually never thought of it that way. That's a good way to think of it. So, all right, Spring Street, you start running it. Then what? Where do we go from Spring Street?
After Spring Street, I'd been there for about 3 years. So it was time to make moves. And a friend of mine was running a bar down the street that just opened up, El Dorado. Mm-hmm. And it was a cocktail bar when it first started. And they convinced me to make the jump from Spring Street, which was the love of my life, into El Dorado to become the general manager, which I had never done that role. But also, most bar managers have never done that role until they get into that role. It's like, You've been here for 6 years. You can manage. And I think that for the most part, where managers are put into roles that they aren't necessarily equipped for. So you have to learn fast, or you fail and go backwards and try again. So El Dorado was a very difficult experience. I think a lot of that, there are a lot of parts that kind of led into that, but I learned more at that bar than most places. And it was, the ins and outs of every little aspect of a bar. I mean, down to paying the cable bill. Like, you don't never think of that when you're managing a bar. And I'm not even worried about the booze anymore. I'm just trying to make sure that the sanitation crew is coming in on time and things like that. So that took away a lot of the kind of mystique where you're like the bartender and you deal with people face to face. And I think that at a certain point, just doing that type of management, I felt disconnected from people. I felt disconnected from my customers, and I got a little downtrodden on the industry altogether. I just kind of wanted to step away from management, start over, go back to bartending, and just be behind the bar 5 days a week, doing what I love, talking to people, hoping they laugh at my jokes, entertaining. Right. And so I left thinking I could easily find a bartending job. I've been in the industry for over 10 years. It's not going to be a big deal. and it was very difficult because I was overqualified for everything and nobody would hire me. And I didn't have a lot of options at the time. There weren't a lot of people hiring. So it was getting to the point where I was either going to, one, be employed for way too long, longer than I was comfortable, or make a pivot.
Yeah.
And so I started looking at brand jobs, and I was looking around, but not very actively. And then I got a phone call from these two guys that worked for Proximo. I'd never met them before, didn't really know much about being a brand rep at all. But they called me, said that I came highly recommended by who I still don't know. and they asked me to kind of meet with them.
Right.
We needed a few emails to go back and forth and just sit down with them and see if it worked. And within a week I was in, ankle deep in mud in Mexico in the agave fields, learning, about this brand that I was suddenly working for. So that was, I think it was a mixture of getting lucky and being confident enough to just say that, yeah, I can do that, not knowing what that really entailed, which was very, very scary because brand work is nothing like bartending.
Right.
You spend so much time on the safe side of the stick, and all of a sudden you're sitting on the bar stools and just trying to get someone's attention and trying to find out who the buyer is. And it's always like you have some ulterior motive because you're sales, you know, the job is sales. But at the same time, you're like, but I'm industry, so I feel like we're always going to be family. But also, I don't want to ask any favors from my friends, but should I ask? And if they don't bring my product in, does that mean that they don't like me? And does that make us not friends anymore? It definitely, when I first started doing it, put me in a weird position where it was like, where does the line, exist between I'm a brand rep trying to sell a product to you're my friend, you should just take it in. You should just help support me. And in understanding as a buyer who, I'd been a buyer for years, the fact that like I have PARs and I have brands that I'm already working with, and I can't just bring new things in because I've got all of these other things that I have to worry about. Your one bottle doesn't really affect me.
Right.
Which was fun. It was fun, and it was very, very taxing for a while until you kind of figure out the system and how it all works.
Yeah, I've been there like as a buyer to be like, oh, I really want to help out I think the latest one was Cole, a guy I think that we both know. Cole wanted to bring on a mass gin.
Rapkin.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No,
it's fine. I just couldn't think of it. And it was just a really great deal that would have been a great price point, but it was just a financial cost up front that I just couldn't at the time swing. And I kept kicking his can down the road with all intention of bringing it on. It just was is this going to work out financially? Are we going to have a good enough week that I can bring on a large case order of a couple $100 when I still need to get everything else for,
and if you run on small margins, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah. So
also the worst is tasting someone's stuff and you're like, I really want to help you out, but I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's true. I've had a few of those, but
that's hard too.
But thankfully I didn't know those people. So it was just, but I was like, oh yeah, thanks for coming in. And
maybe next time.
Yeah. So, you go, you're a brand rep. How do you come across Mulholland? How does that? Were you actively looking to get out of the brand you were currently in?
No, I was actually very happy with my brand. I like the structure of it. It was a brand new program. Okay. So when I was hired, they hired 20 other people across the US. They had never really had a full team of ambassadors. And it was from Maestro Dobel Tequila, which is a company owned by Proximo. Sorry, I'm just fixing my hair. And it's, you know, so it's owned by large companies. So they had the budget to start just like a nationwide ambassador program. We were called Field Brand Specialists. And so when we all met in Mexico, you had this group of 20 people. Some people had been doing the role before. Some people were like me, never done it before. So we all started a group chat and we kind of leaned on each other. I was really good at designing menus and flyers. And so the guy in Chicago would send me his information. I would design his things for him and send them back. And if That's I needed like minute details on different types of agave, I would call the guy in San Francisco and he would talk to me on the phone for 30 minutes and explain things to me. So we all really leaned on each other, but there wasn't a whole lot of direction from above. So that was a big challenge. But at the end of the day, it was nice to feel like you were part of a bigger group. Mm-hmm. I was not looking to leave my job. I thought it was great. And I was learning a lot. But when I was running Spring Street Bar, downtown LA is like as you know, it's like a very small town. Right. Everybody knows everybody. Your regulars are my regulars. I know you because you worked around the corner from me. Yep. And you would drink in my bar and we would drink at bars together. And so someone that used to be a regular of mine had a cousin who was starting up his own liquor brand. And, you know, he had told us about it and we're like, very cool. That's fun. And then one day he asked if he could bring him in, if we wanted to meet him. And I was running Spring Street Bar and my best friend, Vance Daniels, he was running Beelman's Pub, which was about 3 doors down. So we would kind of run the bars together. We did a lot of tastings together. So we agreed and we went just down the road, 5th Street in Los Angeles, right about there. So Skid Row, like right next to King Eddie, very Skid Row. And this was the site of the first Mulholland room. And I met Matt Alper, the owner, and, you know, we were cool. You've got a little tiny Mulholland room. There's like an upstairs. He was trying to design a whole like lounge and bar. Right. We talked to him about that and, you know, gave him some advice. He poured us some warm gin from some sort of like gallon jug. No big deal. Not impressive. There's like bottles and labels aren't made. It was just a white room with some like spray painted logo on the wall.
So you got in there early because I tasted them with bottles and it was the first label with the hand drawn. They were already packaged when I got a chance. So you were in there early.
Very early.
Yeah.
And we're really like, you know, the kind of like they pull a glass and they're like, let me just wipe this off on my shirt really quick. It's clean, you know, it's fine.
It's fine.
So we start tasting this gin and we just sit around talking. And then Vance and I are like, well, maybe a little bit more warm gin. Yeah, I'll take a little bit more. We get 3 glasses in. We can't stop drinking. It's 96 proof is what we find out, and which blew our minds. And then after that, we left just excited about the product, letting him know that as soon as he was like ready to launch, we would be 100% on his team to bring it into our bars, and just glad to support and glad to help. And so at the time, they were just this baby company with this little space. And then I didn't really hear from them for a while. Okay. And then we got an invite about probably a year and change later. We got an invite to the grand, you know, launch of the brand. And by this time they had gotten the labels and the bottles and, you know, their initial packaging, which has changed very slightly as far as like plastic sales and things like that. And so we went, and it was at Walton Goggins' house, who's the actor from Justified and The Unicorn and Righteous Gemstones and all the things. And it was at his house, and I had never met him. It was a little like, well, that's the guy from Justified. That show is amazing. And his house was fantastic. So we'd gone, as we were leaving, you could take these like like wooden boxes that had engraved the logo on it, and inside was a bottle. And you take one out, so you leave. And Vance and I, sneaky little bitches. Sorry, cursing's not allowed on this thing.
No, it's fine. That's fine.
We definitely took a couple extra. Matt knows that now, but
at the time,
I felt a little bad, but at the same time, like, we were sneaky, and that was it. Like, they launched a product, we put it on our back bars. I moved to El Dorado, I put it on that back bar, and we were like, great job, Mulholland, we love you and support you. And then I had gone to work for the other brand. So about 9 months into working with Dobel Tequila, I got a phone call from Matt Alper, which was the surprise. And he just said, hey, I don't know if you've heard about the new Mulholland room. I'm like, oh, okay, new room, interesting. I'm sure it's very different from the last. And he was like, do you want to come down, have a chat, just like hang out, see how everything's going? So in my weird small brain, I'm just like, oh, he just wants to chat, maybe like go over some stuff, ask for some advice, no big deal.
Right.
And so I showed up maybe 40 minutes late, thinking it's very casual. And we sat on the blue velvet couch in the Mulholland room, and we had a little chat. He talked about what I've been doing, and we talked about the company and where it's and how it's been doing. And no big deal. And at the very end, he said, well, I mean, this is kind of a job interview, and you came 40 minutes late. And I'm trying to defend myself. I'm like, first of all, I'm Filipino. I'm always late. Second of all, you didn't tell me it was a job interview. Third of all, I'm not looking for a job. Right. And so we started talking about logistics of what it would be like if I were to work with Mulholland. And it wasn't what I was making. They were a small company versus this huge, Jose Cuervo is like the biggest brand for Proxima, one of the biggest tequilas in the world. So he couldn't, Mulholland cannot pay me even close to enough, not what I was making at the time. But he was persistent, very persistent. And I called a lot of people for advice, because taking a huge pay cut is not really what you do at this point in your career. But I love the brand, and the promises were, I never had to lie about anything. I didn't have to pay for anything. I can be as honest as possible. And there was just nothing was hidden. We were always, what Matt would say, he's like, if you piss in the pool, you can't take it out. So we try not to play the games. Okay. We just try to keep everything honest. And that was my whole thing, was just to stand by a brand long-term, to really believe in something and to be able to grow with it. And then he said I could start a motorcycle club if I wanted to. And that was like, where do I sign? Like, if I could start the Mulholland Motorcycle Club coming one day, then I was in. And so he's been very, very relaxed with letting me kind of navigate how we're perceived as a brand, community, not just bar community, but like local community, LA, arts and music. And even before I started, they were very active with donating to art programs, working with local artists, pop-up bars, and always working with charities. So when I jumped on, he kind of gave me the whole gambit. This is what we do on a yearly basis. We do No Kid Hungry. We do all of these big charities and food and wine festivals, and we donate to all of these places. And after finding that out, I was like, okay, this works for me. I can do this. And so I've been with Mulholland for about almost 2.5 years now. Yeah. But we're in for the long haul.
So, so is it safe to say then you traded, you traded a salary for a little bit more freedom within the company? Was that what they were offering you? Like a little bit more, we're still trying to figure this out. We're still a new company. You've been working as a brand ambassador for, X amount of time. You can bring your expertise, and you have really kind of shaped the way we handle ambassadorship, I guess would be the way to put it, or just how we kind of, how did, I guess where I'm getting is was the marketing aspect of the brand directing kind of always there as a carrot for you at the beginning, or was it something that you were able to kind of move into because out of necessity, or just because the freedoms that the job was seemingly giving you?
Well, let me think. It was all the freedom. It was really, to begin with, Matt had been working with a consultant for a while, Brian Chenault of Conspirator. He's wonderful. So he's been consulting with Mulholland for a while. He'd worked with Katie Emerson on and off on some programming, cocktail stuff, but I was the first like full-time salaried employee that he was bringing on. So when I started, we started kind of just growing this partnership between the two of us and figuring it out together. I don't have a college degree. I went to Vidal Sassoon Academy. I can cut a mean head of hair. You'll never know that.
Never experienced it.
But so my education was really limited, and I told him that I'm like, I don't know if I can get you where you want to go. And he said, I also don't have a college degree.
There you go.
I'm exactly where I want to be, and I want to get there with you. And I think that we can be partners in this together and figure it out. And so after, over the last 2 years, we've brought other team members on. We currently have Claire Ward of Hippo and Aaron Campbell, who works at Bar Claxon. And so as a team, we make a lot of decisions together. Matt and I will discuss everything, but we really try to include everybody and make sure that everybody feels valued. And that's the one thing that a large company can't really do. And I have never been a fan of corporate structure. I hate rules.
Right.
I hate rules so much.
All of us bartenders hate rules.
Yeah.
It's kind of
you work for the bars that we work at because we can figure it out as we go along. We can make it work for us and make it work for the people in our communities, right?
Yeah. I mean,
so Matt gave me the opportunity to kind of make my own rules, make our rules.
Right. And
with that, like, we change them all the time. We're constantly, every month, we talk about what worked and what didn't work, how was last month, and how can we make next month better? Do we not provide enough for our community? Can we do more for our community? Can we do more for our hospitality community? What more can we do, really? That's the biggest question. And we ask that every single month at our monthly meeting. And we're just trying to do that old thing, like, how can we be better every day? How can we do better? How can we be better? And it's not easy, man, when you're a little fish in a big, huge pond with gigantic brands all around you, and we're, trying to keep up.
Are you guys still just like local to LA, or you moved to California, or are we starting to move out east a bit with the product?
Well, we're all Southern California.
Okay.
We got really lucky partnering up with Whole Foods right off the bat.
Yeah.
They picked us up in every single store in Southern California.
That's great.
So as far as the state goes, Northern California is considered a completely different market than Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing really well down here. Places like K&L were some of our first accounts, and K&L is David OG is an amazing buyer. He's got a great palate. So within the kind of like liquor store world or craft spirit buyers, people would see that we were being sold there and see that there was like legitimacy behind that. And then just people all over Los Angeles are so supportive of the products, of our brand, of our team. We grew here really quickly, and then we started focusing on Northern California. So we've been working on that until everything got shut down, unfortunately.
Right.
But we're now in the middle of moving to a few different states that will be in hopefully by the end of summer. And we're expanding quickly because you got to. I mean, personally, my unbiased opinion, it's fantastic
as we say, it's fantastic juice. The stuff's great. And it delivers on everything. It makes promises. There's consistency throughout the line. So you'll get a bottle 1 month. It's the same as the bottle you get down the road. For small brands, that's not necessarily the case sometimes. Like, you definitely have some variance in batching. I've always enjoyed the product. So seeing it grow has always been like, as just a fan rooting here on the sidelines, it's fun to see like it take over slowly and surely take over California and hopefully the country. One of the things I personally love about what I'm going to, give you credit for, I'm hoping I'm correct in this, but the one thing I've noticed is with Mulholland is this, besides your two owners or the two partners in the company, it's the team that's put online as the creative team behind Mulholland it seems to be all women. Am I correct on that? It's just this group of women. Was that something that you brought on to, like, what you had in mind to do this, or was this something the company thought, there's hundreds and thousands of talented women out there,
Sure.
that it was something that they focused in on from the beginning?
Well, I like to call Matt an evil genius because it seems like everything from the very beginning, every choice he's made, every little tiny decision has been so well thought out and has panned out in our favor time and again. And I just always shake my finger and I go, you evil genius. So when he talked to me initially, he said that him and Walton were, just the two of them in charge of the company. And they wanted to make sure that the females were being represented. The gin is a very delicate flavor. The whiskey kind of isn't too much wood, not a ton of time in the barrel, so it lends itself to, I think, more delicate palates. People that aren't necessarily looking for this big, heavy-bodied whiskey. So he wanted to make sure that he had someone working with us that was a female, really. Yeah. And his idea was always to work with someone like me. And then when we sat down and talked about it, we've interviewed men. We've interviewed men for these positions, and they're great, but the team really vibes very well with Matt and Walton, who are very emotional people. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of feelings when we meet. We're very huggy and it's a very close-knit family. So then when we bring a new person into the group, it just feels like the girls have always just felt right at home. Right. And we like to empower women. That's a lot of, we used to do these before quarantine, monthly little private female educational groups where we would, invite 20 girls and we would talk about a brand and we would talk about something pressing that was going on. And it was just a private space for any female in the industry, whether it was someone who worked with coffee or was a bar back or a waitress. They were invited to just kind of join the discussion, hang out with all of these women. So I feel like that's just kind of the way we've formed the team, and it's been very helpful for us because I get along very well with women. I always want to bring other women up. And so I feel like most of our team is going to stay women, but at the same time, there's so many great male brand reps out there that I would love to work with, people that have helped me in my career. And ideally, in different states, we're going to have very different people working for us. But for now, the team is, it's just me and Claire and Aaron just out there trying to get everybody to drink Mulholland. That's it.
Look, I love it personally, just because it's a refreshing point of view to see, and your social pages for Mulholland are fantastic. The cocktails that the three of you create as a way to inspire people how to use the spirit look amazing. I've tasted a few. I know they taste amazing. So I think it's awesome. I think that that's kind of, we need more of that in the industry, because having representation matters, as we've, with the state of the world is now, it's more evident than ever that it matters. And it's definitely one of the things that stands out the most to me about the product, besides the product itself, is how you and your team have been taking over and just dominating the space. So I love that. But
Thanks.
to kind of, for those who aren't familiar and in the fact that, like, so say there's bartenders listening, is there any similarities from the bar? Like, what have you taken from your time behind the bar to how you do your job now?
Okay. This is a fun one. So I think that attention to detail and every aspect of your life helps. So, whether it's making sure that every single glass behind the bar is clean. When you, as a brand rep, go into a bar, you start to notice little things that are maybe above and beyond. I've noticed places where nobody stops moving, where someone's always polishing, where everything is clean and the service is fantastic. So I take note of that. I ask the bartender's name. So when I do reach out to the buyer, I'm like, I genuinely love that you guys use this as a garnish. Like, I've never thought of that.
That's
or cool. Jeffrey was fantastic. That guy has all of the jokes. I would sit in front of him for hours if I had the chance. And it's making it a personal experience, because what I struggled with was looking at bars and restaurants as if they were accounts. This account, that account, how much, as if everybody's the number, and I can't, like, that doesn't sit well with me. And so, putting the name and, putting the name and the faces and the little details, whether it's design details, some people put so much into their design, and I think that having someone mention that their light fixtures are gorgeous and clean is fantastic, because someone is behind that idea. Someone is behind the cleaning that goes into it. I know, because I used to clean all the light fixtures. So you just kind of want to get noticed. And when someone compliments you and what you do, you kind of perk up and you go, okay, well, what do you do?
Right.
And I think that goes a long way, just as far as the transitioning goes. And it's like what you do when you're sitting at a bar. You try to find that common interest between you and the person you're talking to. At the end of the day, you've got a bottle, and there's hundreds of other bottles just like yours. The only thing making it different is the person holding the bottle. I think that the juice speaks for itself, but if you didn't have people like Claire or Aaron bringing you this bottle, you don't have that personal association. So I think that trying to connect with people, just like we do with our customers, is really important. I have 1.5 million hobbies, a lot of them, I'm sure. Yeah. And all of those hobbies are great ways for me to connect with other people. There's so many times that I've gone into a bar and, 4 times I've been in there. I just want to see the buyer. I just want to see the buyer. And finally the buyer comes out and he's just like, can't be bothered. You can see it on his face. He's like, cool. I don't know, make an appointment. Here's my email, whatever. And he'll drop something, or I'll notice something and I'll say, is that your motorcycle out front? And then all of a sudden, like, his entire demeanor changes and he's like, yeah, do you ride? And suddenly we're buddies. And instead of him trying to escape to the office, he's like, let me pour you a drink. Like, let's hang out, let's talk. What do you ride? And all of a sudden they're ordering your product, because it's the person, really, at the end of the day. The product, to be able to sell itself, has to be good, but to get it on the shelf, I think a lot of times it's just the person behind the bottle. And you walk into a bar, you go in and you see the entire back bar behind the bartender, and you look at it and you're like, oh, I know Cole from a mask. That's his bottle. Elliot from Montenegro. They're right there. Everybody is hanging out with you at the bar all the time. And it's really people that make the brands. And I think that's what it takes to be a great brand representative is knowing how to talk to people, but also representing yourself and your brand in as much of a professional manner as you can, while always trying to be fun, but never having too much fun.
I mean, pretty much you're describing being a bartender. Everything you just said is what makes a great bartender. I know when I was a bartender, that's kind of a lot of the things I try to instill within my own work ethic. And I know when I went on to manage bars, that's exactly what I looked at. You know, I hired a lot of people who were super green because I can train you how to do the things, but your personality, you already got most of the step. I always used to joke. I was like, you know, I can train you to be a mixologist. I can train you how to make a drink. I can't really train you how to be a bartender because that's kind of a personality trait. Like you either have it or you don't. Either you get it or you don't. And I think so much of this industry is you either get it or you don't. But I mean, everything you just described is that of a really great bartender. Somebody who is able to do all of those things is going to turn out to be a great bartender. I think why that's important is that, like you have discovered, sometimes we need a pivot in this industry. And I think that a lot of people don't realize how much skill set that they have from working behind a bar or working on the floor as a server, how much that you can go into sales really easily. Or if you were a manager, you can go into a corporate structure of managing a team of, you know, engineers, or because you learn the product at hand. You know, like you didn't know much, you know, we all know how tequila is made, but we don't really know how it's made until we go down to Mexico and see it for ourselves. So you learn the product and then you sell the product, and it's either you're selling me on an upshot at the bar or you're selling me on a bottle as a buyer. Those skill sets are exactly the same. And I think if people see it that way, they can realize that there's life outside behind the bar, that there is a possibility of doing other stuff. So yeah, that's spot on. I think that's awesome.
But also there's definitely a point when you're getting into something new where it's overwhelming, or just the thought of a transition is overwhelming because you're looking at it in an overarching kind of thing, like what does this all entail? And I still do all the time, reminding myself that at some point someone else did not know what they were doing and have succeeded and gone above and beyond. And it's all about putting in the effort and really caring and actually taking the time to do the work. Oh, that's my cat. Sorry.
Oh, you have one of those cats, the ones that knock things over.
Knock everything over.
Yeah.
Yeah, her name's Danger. She's dangerous. Yeah.
So being that we're living in the state right now of, let's just call it what it is, a start-stopping of the industry. It starts and then it stops, and it starts and it stops because of the pandemic going on. I think it's a good time for us to reflect on our industry, where it was before all this and where we see it going. And being outside of outside of working day in and day out in bars, I wouldn't say you're outside of the bar culture, you're very much still part of that. But outside the day to day, have you, leading up to this, did you notice anything you're like, man, I wish this wasn't the way it was? And maybe now that we had this big reset that we can maybe fix moving forward?
I know that I can tell you what's kind of like stuck out for me with dealing with different bars and buyers, also liquor stores and things like that. What's kind of sticking out for me when I'm out there, when I'm talking to people, and I hate bringing her up all the time, but she's just an amazing human. Claire Ward, who also runs the program at Hippo, she goes out of her way to make people feel special. She handwrites notes for the people that order her cocktails, and she'll say, and she knows who her regulars are, or she'll just add like cute little handwritten things that don't mean much for, when you think about it. It's just a little piece of paper, but imagine opening up your bag and you're sitting at home all alone, and you open up your bag of sad quarantine food that you're going to eat by yourself while you're watching Cheers. I've been watching a lot of Cheers. And you pull out a handwritten note that's like, hey, you're great. Yeah. Have a wonderful day.
That's awesome.
And it's things like that. It's making things more personable. It's trying to understand that everybody's going through things, because as people in the industry, we talk about what we're going through and what our peers are going through all the time. And that's, how are we going to survive this? How is this industry going to survive this? But I think that what makes me feel better about it is finding the humanity in everybody that's like having a difficult time.
Yeah.
And figuring out how, as a brand, we can ease some of that, how we can make people feel more connected in a time that everybody feels so separated from each other. So as far as this new culture that's happening, I think a lot of it's going to be, we're gonna start hanging out at home more. We're getting more and more used to it. The first month was hard. Now it's like, why should I leave the house? Why do I want to leave the house? I've got this beautiful wife at home. What do I need to do going outside? And so the culture is going to change to, how can we package those experiences,
right,
those picnics? There's a wonderful place, can't think of the name right now, but they package picnics, and you just walk up the road and they've got this lovely overlook, and you grab your picnic. It's all done and ready for you. You could grab a bottle of wine and you go up and you eat it up on this like lovely hill. And it's little things like that, creating the package that you don't have to do to create a full party of 5 or of 10 in your backyard. And it's that sort of experiential drinking and eating at home. I feel like that's going to be a huge transition. It's not just a to-go food anymore. It's a to-go experience. Like, how do I show you what my bar is like? I know that Melrose Umbrella Company is doing the Melrose Taco. And every time I get their tacos, which is a kit, and you have to cook it, you have to put it together.
That's awesome.
I'm always blown away.
Yeah.
And that's what's fun, because my friends and I cook it together. We put it together. We get to, it's all done for you. Like, everything's portioned out.
Right.
And that's going to be something that I think is going to be offered more. But again, we're all guessing. We're making it up. Guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
you have to make it up.
What's been exciting for me is hearing stories like that is allowing bars and restaurants to think like you'd think as a brand. It's like, you have to think about, how do you market Mulholland? You have to think about product sizes. Do you do 750s? Do you do liters? Are you offering small, like, 250s, 150s, like smaller, bottle sizes? And allowing something like Melrose to go, all right, well, here's a cook yourself to dinner kit. There's Dear John's in Culver City was selling like gourmet TV dinners for a while. Oh, cool. Things that you would never ever do. And I think a big part of that for me has been seeing, at least here in Southern California, I can only speak for us here, that the ABC, the Alcohol Beverage Commission, right? Is that what it stands for?
Alcohol Beverage Control.
Yeah, control. Yeah. How they've allowed us to sell alcohol to go without a special license to do that. And I don't think a lot of people at home, at least in LA, understand that you get your, mason jar full of margaritas because we are now allowed to do this. This isn't something we were allowed to do beforehand. I'm hoping it continues, because I think you're absolutely right, where I don't see people feeling the need to go out as much anymore, and that bars are going to need to find a way, and restaurants need to find a way to, make up for that loss of revenue and selling these cocktail kits to go. And I'm like, maybe the future is like Claire gets a line of Mulholland cocktail kits that you can prepackage nicely on a whole food shelf, you know, it's we all have to, like you said, we're guessing and just trying to find a way to
just everything is a pivot.
Yeah.
I mean, like how we survive this is finding the best way to adapt as quickly as possible and as often as we have to.
Yeah.
My cat is literally playing with a knife. She knocked off a knife, and I'm like looking over there, like, stop playing with that knife. Danger.
She lives up to her name.
Gosh. But yeah, no, you're right. It's just, it's up in the air. We're all speculating, and we can try and guess as much as possible. But I think that just being prepared for anything and just pivot that way. That's not working. Do this. I know that I've talked to people in all different industries, and with people getting furloughed and people taking less time at work. And I know that we kind of put a pause on our PR team, and now I'm the PR team. Right. And, you know, and I'm editing videos and taking pictures and doing, you know, and we're now being forced to do different things, learn new skills and figure it out as we go along. And coming out of this, hopefully we should all be a little bit more well-versed in something other than what we're already doing, because we're kind of being forced to add things to our resume, maybe.
Yeah. For me to you, one of the big reasons I wanted you on this show so early is because out of everyone I know, you've been the most successful with that pivot, like being able to get out from behind the bar, get out from the daily grind of, you know, bar management and into something that you've been thriving at from the outside looking in. And I think you hit it on the head where now's the time to start thinking that there is life outside of the bar that you've been working at for so long, or there is life outside of just the service industry as a whole, because I believe you're correct in that we're all going to take a huge hit moving forward. Like when it opens back up, I've talked about it in other episodes about that. Will the customer base come back in the same way that we were used to them coming back? So having the knowledge in yourself that you can be successful elsewhere using the tools you've learned, I think could be extremely helpful to a lot of people. So for me, it was important to get you on early because I can get that message out while everyone's sitting at home, you know, wondering what their next step's going to be. And then, you know, maybe it's not necessarily brand ambassadorship, but there is, you can see the through line of the skills you learned here and how you apply it over here. And,
for sure.
And that could be almost any job.
Anything.
So,
and thanks. That's very nice.
Of course. All right. So been wrapping these up because I feel like a lot of things we've been talking about is heavy in a lot of these episodes. So I want to find a way to keep it light. And so I have come up with a segment. Coleen Morton, have you ever shit where you ate before? Meaning, for those who don't know, have you ever dated within the workplace?
Within the workplace?
Within the work, like at the bar you worked at, like, have you ever dated a coworker? Have you ever fooled around with, like, has it caused some interesting and hilarious story that we can now talk about?
Never. I'm sorry. I can't. I don't mean to let you down for something fun and juicy. I've dated within the industry. I do try not to do that.
Yeah.
I've dated bar owners, bar managers, other brand reps, sometimes just your normal bartender who's just, you know, getting by slinging drinks. But never ever where I work. I like to think of it like, I feel like a lot of bars or bartenders, because we work in a job where we're technically not supposed to drink, but sometimes you drink, and we're constantly around people, and you create these like families, like these families within your bar, your restaurant. I feel that it's not a playground, it's someone's business, and it's,
Sure.
someone puts a lot of time and money into building something, and then they put you in charge of it, or they ask you to represent it. And I think that respecting that is so important, because I like to think of it, one day, if I ever own a place, I would really like to think that my karma goes into the fact that my bar staff respects me. And frankly, there are so many interesting people out there. I do not need to be talking about booze all day, every day with the person that I'm fooling around with.
That's true. That's a very good point.
So never. I try to keep it professional. Also, I'm not into awkward situations.
Yeah, no, I mean, as somebody who's guilty of it, I mean, I always looked at it from the fact that like my entire social circle is this bar or restaurant that I'm working in. So it's like, where else am I going to go meet anybody? So it's kind of like, your whole life's there. But also being that you've been downtown for so long, it's a very big social circle downtown. Like I was in my 20s, I was working in the Valley in Burbank. So it's not a very big social circle there. It's like your life's the bar you work in.
Mm-hmm. But it's the same for any profession, really. Yeah. I mean, most romances happen in the office. You spend a third of your day in the office. You spend most of your week at this bar. And chances are, if you love the bar you work at, you go there on your days off.
True. And
you drink there too. So it's easy to flirt with the person. It's easy to like have a couple of shots of Fernet and just like a little, we're having a good time. And that can lead to, who knows? And I know plenty of people who have definitely shit where they eat, and no judgment, but I see the fallout, and the fallout is so not worth it. Like so not worth it. And
it definitely can't be. But then, for the listening audience at home, or you end up like me and my wife and we get married. So.
Oh yeah. But that's a love story. Very different. That's not like some seedy bar. That's a love story. Everybody saw it coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we didn't see it coming when we first started, but that's a story for another day. All right. I was having a little lighthearted fun, but yes, you're right. And this is why you are who you are, and why you're killing it in the field that you're killing it in and on all levels, because you operate on a higher level than I think the rest of us. So kudos to you.
I don't know if I agree with that, but that's very sweet. I think that we're all just trying to make it and figure it out as we go along. And I feel like I get lucky often, but I have certain principles that I live my life by, and I try to always be, the best version of myself. And I think that right now during the quarantine is, I keep telling people when they're feeling sad, I talk to a lot of people every day, that this is the ultimate cocoon moment. There is never, ever going to be a time like this again. Yeah. You'll never have this much time to yourself. So if you don't come out as a butterfly, you're squandering it. Like, take this time to feel better about yourself and work out and get a better body. Take this time to read more books and, expand your knowledge, and take this time to get like 7 more hobbies and really figure out what you like to do and what you want to spend your extra time on, because we've never had extra time, as well as I do, that we just run and just, we're constantly chasing it, and you don't really have a second to breathe, where all we've been doing for months is sitting there breathing in that same old air conditioned air, if you're lucky enough to have an air conditioner.
I mean, look, I took it as a much needed break, as you probably did for the first, I did it probably longer than most, but I've been doing this for, I've been running hard for, I'd say, 5 years, but in the industry for 22 plus years, and it's no weekends, no real time off. You're just always hustling. So like, to have this break, I was like, I'm just gonna do nothing. For like a month, I was like, I'm gonna do nothing.
Lay in that kiddie pool.
Exactly. I got a kiddie pool. I'm gonna learn sourdough, which I found out that I'm not very good at. So I had to take some time, but that was also why I started this, because it was like, I'm looking for my pivot as well. And I am fortunate enough to know a lot of people in this industry, and I want to share everyone's stories, and I want to, touch in and check in with people and see how they're doing. And I feel like this is a good, cathartic thing for some people. Some of the guests have been like, really like, I got to vent a little bit. And so I'm with you. I think that on some level you should be coming out more butterfly than not. But each person's got their own way of.
For sure, man. For sure.
Well, my dear, this has been a blast. For the listening audience at home, where can they find more about Mulholland? You want a cheap plug?
There's always Instagram. I feel like we Instagram things before we Google them now because we're, such visual. Everything is visual. So Instagram, Mulholland Distilling. Same thing for the website, Mulholland Distilling. And you can find it just about anywhere. Whole Foods, Bevmo, wine.com, your local restaurants. Like, it's all over if you're in Southern California. And hopefully if there's anyone outside of California listening, hopefully you'll find it soon.
Yeah. Well, Coleen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that wraps up another episode of Corner Service, Memoirs of the Service Industry. I've been your host, Eric Cachopo. Thank you, Coleen. Best of luck and everything. Hopefully we get back to a normal soon.
We can have a drink together.
We can have a drink together in person again. So yeah. All right. Please, I got to do the shill stuff. So please, if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe and hit all the likes and all the
follow,
all the stuff.
Share
it, all that stuff. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you next time. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.